you doing, everybody? This is Andrew Goldberg and Brendan Stout on MLL Roundtable on the Lacrosse Radio Network on this very snowy Tuesday at our new time on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. You can tweet at us at MLL Roundtable, at Goldieberg, GOALDIEBERG, and at BSTAUDT631. And of course, like us on Facebook at MLL Roundtable. Brendan, how are you holding up in the snow here?
I'm doing all right, man. I was at work at about 8 o'clock this morning, got released at 3:30, so I lost 2.5 hours worth of pay, but safety first.
Yeah, surprised you actually went to work at all. I mean, I don't know what it is by you, but it started kind of getting bad around me up here in Jersey. I would say about like 11.
Yeah, it started coming down here pretty heavy around 9 around us. Yeah. But, got 4-wheel drive, so I'm all good to go.
Yeah, look at you. Yeah, I mean, hopefully for anybody who's listening right now, you're home, you're in the warmth of your house, you're somehow either snowed in and haven't gone anywhere, or you came back safely from work, and you're listening to us. There's not a lot of sports going on tonight. I know it's Big Tuesday in college basketball, but that's really about it. Otherwise, you got unimportant NBA games going on, and no football until next Sunday, unless you're going to watch the Senior Bowl this Saturday or the Pro Bowl on Sunday. I don't think anyone's going to watch a Pro Bowl. I might just watch the draft on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think the draft might be the only exciting part about football. When they take.
I want someone to freaking talk smack on that and just something to happen.
Oh, that'd be hilarious.
Yeah. Anyway, we got a great show for you lined up tonight. We are going to look at the Team USA roster as they try to dwindle down their team to 30 men, and 23 will actually, I guess, travel or be active once the team plays in the FIL Championships in Denver in mid-July. This Saturday, or this weekend, I should say, from Friday to Sunday, they will have, I guess, like a very abbreviated training camp or last kind of tryout. I'm assuming Friday and Saturday will be structured stuff. And then Sunday they will have the blue-white scrimmage on Watch ESPN at 1:30, actually. And then it'll re-air, I believe, at 10 o'clock on ESPNU. So that will be actually very exciting and something to watch to kind of give you that lacrosse fix as you wait for college lacrosse to start up next week at the end on, I think it's Sunday. I know I'm announcing the St. John's Hartford game. We're going there. It's going to be right here on Lacrosse Radio Network, and it should be fun. So for those of you who haven't been following Team USA, they brought in an original huge group of 90 players to try out, and then after, I think it was about the end of August, September 3rd, they announced that they dwindled the team down from 94 to 52 players, and they will have 23 spots after that. So I think there were a lot of notable names that were left off the roster, Brendan, from the first time. One name that really comes out to me was John Lade. I was very surprised that he got cut. I think he was one of the best defensemen in college lacrosse for 2 or 3 years. And he just got cut for, a guy like Joe Fletcher, who's from Loyola. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, John Lade be one of the best defenders out of Syracuse. Stuff might just have happened. Stuff might have just come up. I know Joe Walters and a couple guys before anything took place, like the tryouts and whatnot, to get down to 52. They opted out of participating. I know, Ryan Boyle, he opted out as well, giving the younger guys a shot. Ryan Boyle is up there in age. No offense to the guy, he still brings it, but sometimes after winning gold last time, you kind of go out on top in a sense. But yeah, not seeing John Lade on the roster heading into this weekend, it is kind of heartbreaking in a sense. But things happen. Coaches want a certain system put in, and if it doesn't fit with a certain player or something like that, it's just what it is.
Yeah, and they actually did the cut down was actually supposed to be to 46 players, but they increased it to 52 to account for injuries because I think there were a couple guys at that time who were battling some nagging injuries. I think Rabel and even who was it? It was Max Sebald, I think, was battling an ankle injury of some sort. But anyway, as you look at the roster here, Brendan, we kind of forecast it for the next couple weeks because they will hold their scrimmages like I said on Sunday, and then they won't announce the final roster until February 5th when they cut it down to 30 guys, 23 of which will dress. I mean, Coach Meade, Richie Meade, who's taken over Furman for the first year of their program as they go to Division I, he has quite a task, or I guess he has quite a task ahead of him. And he really has a good problem, if there is such a thing, in terms of the names that he has to cut. So as we're kind of like making predictions here, let's go with the attack unit first. So for the guys who are eligible right now in terms of attackmen, you have Matt Danowski, Charlotte Hounds, Marcus Holman, Ohio Machine, Eric Law, Denver Outlaws, Kevin Lavelle, Rochester Rattlers, Brendan Mundorf, Denver Outlaws, Rob Pennell, New York Lizards, Steele Stanwyck, Ohio Machine, Garrett Thule, Hamilton Nationals, Drew Westervelt, Chesapeake Bayhawks, and Ryan Young, Charlotte Hounds. And I made a mistake because Mundorf is now on the Bayhawks. I'm reading off the 52-man roster from last time. But when you look at that group, who do you think, I guess, would be the best bet to make the team?
If I was going to go off of this, I'd say Drew Westervelt, Mundorf, and it's a three-way tie for me between. Well, if we're going to go young guys, I'm going to say Ryan Young, Rob Pennell, and Eric. Who was it? Probably Eric Law. After his 9-goal performance in their championship weekend game lost to Charlotte, Eric Law made a name for himself that game. I don't know where that guy came from. I mean, he was a little on the shorter side, but at the same time, that guy plays like he's one of the biggest guys in the game. He's just in the right place at the right time. Just ball bounces his way very easily, and he just somehow he just scores goals left and right. Ryan Young, electrifying, very emotional in the game. Was one of the key reasons why Charlotte was as effective as they were against Denver and Chesapeake in the championship games. Drew Westervelt, of course, the big Drew Westy kid. The dude is just unbelievable. Just the way he uses his body, his size. Post up against guys when they play, like when we were talking to Rocco, he would if the defense was pressing out, he'd play outside, still score goals. If they were compacted in, defense on the backside of the pipe, he was inside using his indoor skills. So he has a two-way set of skills that are just beyond effective. Quarterback of last year the Denver Outlaws. He's a leader out there, just one of the most effective players in the game. Him and Westervelt together, when they played together at UMBC, they were just a dynamic duo that just knew each other's game. And seeing them together on Team USA would be beyond terrific. And then you got Rob Pennell. This kid just blows my mind. The way he goes to the cage, the goals that he scores, that question mark dodge that he has is pretty much unstoppable. I was watching some highlight reels today at work. There's no one at work. I'm watching some highlight reels today, and just how he just controls the tempo of the game is fantastic. If he doesn't make the Team USA, it's a little bittersweet. If he doesn't make it, it's okay. He's young. He's got a lot. He's got a huge career ahead of him. He's going to learn from guys like Palasek and Westervelt and Mundorf and everybody who's playing through, playing on the Lizards and playing and trying out for Team USA. Just the little tips he's gonna like. Even all the young guys are gonna receive. Gareth Bowles, Steele Stanwyck, Pinnell, Law, Holman. All those guys are gonna receive so many little tips about about different situations and like little things to do to your defender, especially in the league. But if he does make it, that's awesome. You know, he's one of the most effective players coming into the MLL, especially as a rookie. You know, rookie of the year. So it's bittersweet either way for him.
Yeah, I think I mean personally, when I look at this attack unit, it's a good mix of old guys and young guys. I mean, part of me feels that a lot of these younger players may get the hook, partly because of the whole idea that they have another, 4 or 8 years left in their career to make this team, whereas a guy like a Drew Westervelt or a Brendan Mundorf or even really a Kevin Lavelle, I don't think will obviously have another chance with another 4 years of young players coming in to the league, and they're going to have outstanding players coming in. Personally, when I look at the attack unit, I think I would agree with Westervelt and Mundorf for one more year. I think this is most definitely their last stand. I know Kevin Lavelle is a great player for Rochester, but I don't actually see him making the team. I think he'll get the hook. In terms of the younger guys, between Holman, Law, and Pinnell, I'm going to give the edge to Pinnell. I don't think Holman makes it because he's not as dynamic. He has a very big shot, but he's a little undersized, and I think he's kind of one-dimensional in terms of how he plays. It's kind of similar to Eric Law. I mean, Eric Law last year when I was doing the rookie reports in lacrosse, I mean, he was arguably the best rookie in the MLL. He was putting up routinely, 5-6 points and putting in the goals like nobody else. And then he kind of fell off, towards the end before busting out with like a 9-point game at the end of the year, where he had like 4 goals, 5 assists. But if you're looking at those 3 guys, Pinnell is the most complete player. He can score, he can quarterback an offense, he can get guys the ball. He's got the quickness and the speed to break down a defender and a defense. And I just feel that it's going to be Westervelt, Mundorf, Pinnell, and then I would give the edge to Danowski in terms of those 4 guys, because I don't think they had to head to Denver with only 3 attackmen. I mean, like you had mentioned, I don't think Ryan Young makes it. He is one of the better players in the league. He was an all-star last year, but I don't think he makes it. Steele Stanwyck, I mean, it's crazy to say that he wouldn't make it. Like, I mean, it's just incredible because you look at all these names and you say, oh, yeah, Marcus Holman's not going to make it. Or, like, Steele Stanwyck's not going to make it. Steele Stanwyck was one of the best players in college lacrosse when he came out his senior year. And he put up incredible numbers, and the guy has 1 pec. I mean, it's just incredible when you look at it. But if I had to do it, I guess I would say Danowski, Pinnell, Mundorf, Westervelt, and I think the rest of the guys get narrowly edged out.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad pick at all. Janowski was definitely my other pick besides Ryan Young. If I didn't pick Ryan Young, Matt Danowski just has a lot of leadership in him. He was one of the, like I said about Young, but he was one of the more leadership players for the Charlotte Hounds this past year.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Young was, right, like you said, Ryan Young was, I mean, he would get his guys fired up. after every goal. He did the same thing at Maryland. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, do you think that guys like Holman, Law, and Pennell don't even see the roster because of that, what I mentioned before in terms of, the young guys having all this, extra time to make the team in the next couple of years?
That's one of the bigger questions, and I completely, I'm happy you brought that up. It's honestly, it's hard to say. I agree with Holman not making it. I agree with Stanwyck not making it. Like you said, it's amazing to hear these guys not getting to the final spots. The only reason I agree, I agree with what you said. He's not ready. He's a one-dimensional player. He has a unique set of skills. Don't get me wrong. The kid is electrifying. He's low to the ground, very short. I don't want to say very short, but like Eric Law, he's on the shorter side, but he uses that to his advantage. He'll take on the biggest defender, but he'll play you like the biggest attackman. But he's his size and Eric Law's size might keep them out of the final roster. Not to say that they don't have the skills to do it, but just right now, I don't think it's their time.
Yeah, and I think maybe Coach Meade being kind of a older guy, maybe kind of leaning more towards a veteran leadership. Going into this FIL World Championships in Denver from July 10th to the 19th, I think he'll want to go with guys like Danowski and Mundorf and Westerveld. Like, honestly, Rob Pennell is one of the best players in the league right now, and he showed it last year by absolutely just, dominating the competition when he came in. But I wouldn't be shocked if Rob Pennell didn't make it and they took a guy like Ryan Young instead of him, because technically they do have a quarterback on the team. Like, Danowski can play that role perfectly. He did it at Duke. He was the all-time scoring leader in NCAA history before Pennell broke it during the Final Four last year, coincidentally against Duke. So it wouldn't shock me if Pennell didn't make it and Coach Meade kind of went towards the more veteran leadership kind of thing at all.
Yeah, I mean, he's a Navy guy, and he looks for leadership qualities. That's one of the reasons why Navy was such a serious, I don't want to say serious, a very well put together program, is because Richie Meade looked for those guys that could lead, and he had it in Matt Russell, Ian Dingman, a couple of those guys, the Looney brothers back in the day. That's why Navy was such a threatening program, because Meade knew the guys that could lead the team onto the field and lead them to victory, and he found those a lot in there, the seniors and stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if he went with the older guys.
Right. So we're covering the TAC. I think we're pretty uniform throughout in terms of our picks. I mean, we may differ on one or two guys, but it kind of, like we just said, kind of depends on what Coach Meade's temperature is at in terms of taking a younger guy and playing him in the FIL Championships. So let's look at the midfield, because I think the midfield is the hardest position to put together on a team, partly because of the low numbers he already has in terms of bringing 23 guys and spreading that playing time around and making midfield units, first line, second line, and kind of making a continuity between all those guys uniform and giving them the best chance to win. And also from the point of how many defensive midfielders to bring and how many offensive midfielders to bring. I mean, Brendan, what do you think about that in terms of how you construct your midfield in a World Championships like this? Do you think you lean more towards the offense, maybe bring one or two more guys, or do you go towards the defense, just in case, because the defensive guys, can technically go both ways and you may run out of numbers?
I'm going to say this is one of the harder decisions to make, because they have so much offensive threat on this roster, on this, the two rosters of blue and white teams. Defensively with the short sticks, right now I just have a feeling that Matt Abbott's going to make it this year. I believe he was cut last year. but I really think Matt's made a case for himself to get there. Matt's one of the more dynamic players coming in. He can push the ball in transition. He plays very well, very great defense. He's very good at clearing the ball, and he can go shoot and score if he wants to. So that's a big, and you're going to need you're going to need two-way midfielders for this FIL coming in. I mean, going up, Japan's getting better. They're athletic as anything. Australia's getting better. A bunch of teams have gotten better through the years. So I think you lean more towards the defense, just to have like some backup in a sense. So yeah, that's probably.
I mean,
yeah.
So I'm looking at the roster from last year just to get an idea of how many players they took. They took about, or I shouldn't say last year, but last time they did the FIL Championships, the 2000, which was in 2010. The 2010 roster had 5 attackmen on it and 10 midfielders, and one of them was Ned Crotty, who was kind of a mix between midfield and attack.
Yeah.
So you had, just to list, I guess, just to get an idea for our listeners, is that you had midfielder Kevin Cassis, which is actually kind of funny because he's now the coach at Lehigh. But when he did play, he played for Boston. So you had him. You had Ned Crotty, who was midfielder attack. Kyle Dixon, midfielder. Steven Pizer, Paul Rabel, Chris Schiller, Max Sebald, Alex Smith, Matt Strebel, and Matt Zash. I would think that Alex Smith was more or less your main face-off guy. And if I do remember correctly, Matt Zash was kind of your backup face-off guy. Mm-hmm. But he was good enough that he could also play offense as well. Pizer and, I guess, Schiller, I think, were more guys that are defensive midfielders. Obviously, Paul Rabel was just coming out around that time. He had just graduated 2 years prior. And, I mean, he, was just an athletic freak, offensive guy. And then you had the same thing with Kyle Dixon and Kevin Cassis. So, based on that, I would say I do agree with you, especially with today's rules where they kind of take out the horns to speed up the game, at least in college. You need a lot more two-way midfielders. So a guy like Matt Abbott is huge for your team. Even a guy like, looking at the roster, Stephen Brooks. Both guys can play great defense, and their speed is incredible between the lines, and they can be a threat in transition, which is huge. So in terms of that, I would say you get, 2 or 3 core defensive midfielders, and then you probably bring about 2 face-off guys, which I forgot to mention as well, which leaves you with about 4 or 5 offensive middies. Obviously, these guys can all bring it from the outside. They're all professional players. But in terms of pure offense, I mean, I would say you need at least a line and a half of offensive guys, and you sprinkle some defensive players in there as well.
Yeah, the face-off guys, you're going to bring 2, obviously. Mike Poppleton and Greg Renley are my top 2 to go. No offense to Chris Eck or Anthony Kelly, but Poppleton is just his what's the word I'm looking for? Just his strategy. I know strategy is not the word I want to use, but his strategy, the strategy that he uses, is very effective against his opponent. And Greg Renley had the top face-off percentage after this past season, after dealing with ACL tears and all this other stuff that happened to him. And I'm glad the Beast is back. One thing I did notice, unfortunately, is that he is on the unable to perform list heading into this weekend down in Florida, which I'm kind of upset about. Because I wanted to see him and Anthony Kelly go at it for a little bit, but unfortunately he won't be there, he won't be participating. So Poppleton has a chance to pop up, if you will, in the coach's eyes. And Chris Eck and Anthony Kelly are going to go up in. I think Kelly's by himself. I won't quote him. No, sorry, Chris Eck is by himself. So Poppleton and Kelly are probably going to fight for that one spot. Get the starting spot. D mids, like we said, we both agree on Matt Abbott. That kid is just so special at what he does. It's very rare to find a player as good as him at playing defensive mid, clearing the ball, and then going and playing offense. It's very rare to find a player that's good at all those three in one guy, and Abbott's that guy. Um, Kevin Understein, he's very physical, very aggressive, but he might be a little. I don't want to say too physical, but he might be a little too wild, maybe, because he does get, from what I've seen, from what I understand, he gets a lot of penalties and whatnot. So it's something the coaches really want to focus on is staying out of the box. Obviously, any coach wants to stay out of the box. Chris Schiller is one of the fastest guys in the league. He's up there in age. Some guy that works out at my gym played with him in college at Penn State, and he talks about him all the time about how fast he is and how aggressive he is and how honed down his skills he is. And I would love to see Schiller go again after winning it last time. Then you got Jeff Reynolds and Kevin Drew, who are two of the other really good defensive mids in the league. Jeff Reynolds is playing for Coach Cottle. He probably learned a lot more this year than he did in years past. No offense to his other coaches, because Cottle he's a mad scientist. Kevin Drew, another him and Reynolds are pretty much like the same player in a sense. Just how I can't think of words tonight. He's.
I mean, is he built like, a guy like, in terms of what I look at in terms of the short stick defensive midfield, is that a guy like Matt Abbott, when you were talking about him, is that he has such a rare combination of being able to literally lock down a guy one-on-one without any help. He can strip the ball, be quick enough to get the ball off the ground, run it down the end, with incredible speed, and, turn it into transition. Some of these other guys, Chris Schiller, I haven't really seen play, but I assume that in terms of making predictions, you're saying he's one of the fastest guys. I mean, I don't know how much of that is the case still.
Yeah.
But, I mean, because he did graduate in 1999, it's now 14 years afterwards. Do you think they go younger at that position and Schiller loses out? I mean, Unterstein may be the same way. Even though both of them are two of the best defensive midfielders in the league. I mean, I know Dan Burns, I remember watching him at Maryland. He was one of the top, defensive midfielder guys, and he was a Coach Cottle guy. And then Steven Pizer made the team last time in 2010. You would have to think that he's going to be a repeat guy,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely understand where your point of view is coming from. The older guys are going to start losing out. I mean, after they won the gold the last time they played, Schiller was on that team. I don't think I mean, him and Understein, age is a factor in this year. The top five guys in Reynolds, Pizer, Drew, Burns, and Abbott on that list right there are five key guys that if I was Coach Mead, I would be looking at. No offense to Schiller and Understein, but I would look at those top five guys and pick probably 3 or 4 of those. Pizer, he's getting moved around from team to team, so I don't know if he would really be a guy to go. Not that he's not capable of it, obviously, but just seeing him getting moved from team to team to team is like kind of concerning in my eyes.
Well, yeah, because you would think that they would, think of it this way. A guy like, let's make a comparison in football, right? Anquan Boldin gets traded from, or he doesn't even get traded. He starts out in Arizona. He has an incredible rookie and sophomore year. He was rookie of the year. He was making all these catches. Came out of nowhere as a second rounder at Florida State. Then the team lets him go. You would think he's so special after those 3 or 4 years with the team that they would try and keep him. But they let him go. So who picks him up? Baltimore picks him up. Baltimore uses him during the duration of the contract, and he was the key guy for Joe Flacco during their Super Bowl run. Probably one of the main reasons that Joe Flacco even got $126 million, he should probably give that money to Anquan Boldin. Then Boldin just leaves, or actually they trade him to San Francisco, and he's a key part in San Francisco. So you would think, I mean, even though he's putting up stats everywhere, that, there's something concerning about moving a guy in every single place they don't want to bring him back. And like you're saying in terms of Steven Pizer, maybe he's a great player, as a second, third, fourth option or something. I know that doesn't apply here with short stick D middies, but if he's your third or fourth best midfielder here, maybe you cut ties with him and go with a younger guy like Jeff Reynolds or Dan Burns.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the three Chesapeake guys on that list are probably three of the best in the game today, and they all play together. So, I mean, if you're going to take 3 D mids, you might as well take the 3 teammates that work well together. You know what I mean? But when you were saying about Joe Flacco putting that money, I mean, I think he should give some to us. Send some our way. I could use about $2 million. That'd be nice. Pay off my student loans, get a pretty decent car.
Yeah. I mean, all of us could use a couple mil, right? You know what, Joe? If you're listening to this, which you definitely aren't because you probably don't even know what lacrosse is, even though you're from the state of Delaware, actually New Jersey first, but he went to Delaware. Give us $100,000. I'll gladly take $100,000. I'll pay off all my loans. I'll get some nice retirement money. Maybe I'll take a nice vacation somewhere. Hey, I wouldn't mind a couple $100,000. Anything after is a nice bonus. But spread the wealth. Or actually, you know what? Clayton Kershaw. You just made like $250 million for throwing a baseball. I know baseball players and lacrosse players don't really like each other's sports too much, but, spread the wealth, man. Spread the wealth to us. How about that?
Yeah, send some our way, I gotta pay some bills.
Yeah, I got some things to do. I mean, you live in La La Land. Your life's great already. You pitch every 5 days, and your life's wonderful. Help the poor man out. So
help the small man. Come on.
Yeah, remember where you came from.
There go the taxes.
Right?
That's right.
So to get back from our little diversion from the list, so for our listeners on our midfield, we have offensively, I guess you would say, because we don't have because they split it between midfielders and short stick D middies. In terms of regular midfielders, you have Stephen Brooks, Kevin Buchanan, Ned Crotty, Kyle Harrison, Ben Hunt, David Lawson, Jojo Marasco, Matt McCreadys, Paul Rabel, Max Seaball, Jeremy Sieverts, Drew Snyder, and Matt Strebel. And then short stick D midi-wise, as we mentioned, Abbott, Burns, Kevin Drew, Steven Pizer, Reynolds, Schiller, Unterstein. Out of that group, Brendan, and assuming they take about the same amount of midfielders, the 10 midfielders, and I guess with the face-off guys too, and Chris Eck, Greg Gernlian, Anthony Kelly, and Mike Poppleton, who do you think makes the team, assuming about 10 or 11 guys?
Well, like I said, my 2 face-off guys are Greg Gernlian and Mike Poppleton. I just love what they do. Like I said, no offense to Eck and Kelly, but Gernlian and Poppleton, it's just the way that their set of skill, just where their skills are. I just like them the best out of those 4. Short stick D mids, Abbott, Burns, and probably Reynolds. The only reason I say that is because not because they're teammates, but because those are probably the 3 most effective guys in the game at the short stick D mid position. Offensively, so that's 5 guys gone already.
Five offensive midfielders.
5 offensive. I'm going to go Ned Crotty, Matt McCreadys, Paul Rabel. I wanted.
Call, right?
It is the last 3. The last 2 are really hard because I would love to have Stephen Brooks back, but the season that he just had for the MLL did not convince me. He probably did work on his shot and his skills in the off. Like this past season, I don't think he had the best year that he's ever had. I'll take Ben Hunt. The big guy out of North Carolina. He turned it on in the championship weekend, just absolutely dominated. Um, and that last spot is because I want Strebel and I want Seabold and I want Sieverts. I want all three of those S guys. Um,
You want to make like a cone headline like the 1980 Miracle Team, don't you?
well, I was just about to say that. Absolutely. And I want to take Strebel because he can still fire the ball. Like I don't. The guy's or what? He's like what 38.
He's definitely up there in years.
Yeah, like he's one of the oldest guys in the league. I think he's the oldest guy in the league, maybe. Besides Powell, of course. But the guy can still shoot. He can still shoot. He can still move. And he's the oldest guy in the league, and his game got better this year. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's incredible because just looking at the statistics from this year, being how old he is, he led the league in 2-point goals with 8. Second was Matt Danowski and Jeremy Sieverts.
Yeah, and that's the other reason about Sieverts is that he can bring it from the outside too. And then you got Seabald, who's just a workhorse. Like that guy just works so hard at everything he does, and it sucks because he hurt his ankle and he hasn't really played. And that's one of the more concerning things about Seabald I have is that he hasn't played in that much over the last year, and it's very concerning. And it's just those three guys are really. And I mean, even Snyder's making a name for himself, but he's still that young guy, and it's really hard for him. It's really hard for me to pick him because of how young he is and how I don't know if I want to say inexperienced, but because he's so young, that inexperience will show. And then you got Jojo Marasco and Dave Lawson, who are also young guys. Yeah, they may be able to bring it and whatnot, but they're young. They haven't played at this type of level before. And it's and watching the young guys this weekend is going to be very eye-opening, not for just us, but for the coaches as well, obviously, and for the fans. It's going to be very eye-opening as to who exactly is going to make this team. I mean, I know they took Rabel and Crotty a year or two after they graduated into the FIL games, but that's also they had a year or two of MLL under the belt at playing at such a high level, and that's one reason I wouldn't pick Lawson or Marasco because they haven't had that much experience under their belts. Even though they're great players, don't get me wrong, their leadership and everything is just amazing. They're just young guys, and I just don't know if they're ready for, or if they can. Not that they couldn't handle it, but if they're mentally and physically ready for the style of play at the FIL games. It's that final spot. Oh, you know what? I'm taking Strebel. I'm taking Strebel. He may be one of the oldest guys in the game, but I'm taking him. I love the old guys, the way that the leadership, their thought process, the way that they go into the game nowadays. They're old school, and I love that Strebel can still bring it from the outside as an old school player. So Matt Strebel, you're my man, my fifth boy.
Yeah, I think I will agree with you. Okay, so how I'm gonna pick this is a lot has to do with the style of each player, because I think you have to take that into account. Do they have a 2-point arc in the FIL Championships, Brendan?
That I'm not completely positive.
Because assuming yes, then I would take a guy like Strebel and Rabel as my two definites, because as you mentioned, and as I mentioned right before, is that Strebel can still bring it from the outside. So you need those two guys, especially Rabel with like 110 mile per hour shot or whatever he has. Both those guys can stretch the defense, allowing the attackmen to come and work under on, inside rolls or, 5-and-5 moves on the island that they want to get to. It spreads the field out and makes sure that the defense can't just pack it in, So in terms of that, I would take those two guys. Now, also, what's unique about Paul Rabel is that he can break a guy off on the dodge or defense on the dodge. He can penetrate, draw a slide, and then move the ball. So that's why I would have him. In terms of guys who wouldn't make it, I would say David Lawson, Marasco. Those two guys definitely should not make it. I don't think they were impressive in the MLL this year. Marasco really had trouble this year playing against MLL players and really didn't heat up until the last 2 games where he recorded, I think, a total of 8 points, and he had like 11 for the whole season.
Mm-hmm.
Lawson had a pretty good year, but I think he's still a year or 2 away from really impacting the game. Now, in terms of the last like 3 or 4 guys I think I would take Kyle Harrison and put him maybe on a second line, or maybe you just run him, with whoever, because he's another guy who can break down a defender, and take a shot from the outside. He has good vision. He's a Johns Hopkins graduate, smart guy, so I would take him. I'm not convinced that Kevin Buchanan can play, at least with these guys, in terms of, I'm sorry if it puts listeners off of our show that I'm kind of biting towards the younger guys, but especially now I feel like it's kind of becoming more of a younger guy's game, and in terms of the speed and everything, and also in terms of the whole weekend, I think they're going back to back to back, so in terms of guys having to heal, obviously the older you are, the tougher it is to come back and play well. Obviously the younger you are, the quicker you can bounce back. And a lot of these guys are younger and will be able to bounce back. Maybe not Strebel in my pick, but in terms of who I bring, McCready's I kind of like as a quick, shifty guy out of Penn State as well. And I think he can, if he gets stuck on defense in, some odd transition game, I think he can hold up as well. In terms of that last spot, maybe I'd bring Ned Crotty, who's actually leaning towards the older side. But in terms of when you look at it in terms of a 2-point goal, Jeremy Sieverts had 6, second in the league. Ben Hunt had 3. He was tied for 5th in the league. These guys, I don't want to take too many guys who can just bring it from the outside because it's too much one dimension. I want guys who can kind of do both, break down a defense, maybe finish inside. So I wouldn't really, I think I'd give it to Sieverts, Sieverts, and use him on like a second line type of midi. You split up Strebel and Snyder, put both of those guys on separate lines for the big guns, and then you have Harrison and Rabel on separate lines as well, because they can really break down a defense. And then, who did I say? I'm bringing Matt McCready's in. I'm bringing that. Short stick D midi-wise, Abbott's a lock because of what we had mentioned before. If I'm going to bring 2 guys, I would say maybe Pizer because of his experience in the FIL game. I know we kind of talked about in terms of a guy moving from one team to another so many times within such a short time frame can be concerning, but there is something to be said about making the team prior to that. And then I'd probably go Kevin Drew as well in terms of getting him. And then when we look at the face-off, Poppleton was a 60% guy in college last year, and then he came in and really stabilized the face-off game for the Hamilton Nationals. I don't know if he makes it because technically, Greg Gernlian and Chris Eck were 2 of the best face-off guys in the game. So I would have to go with them in terms of the face-off. But I guess my question to you, Brendan, is do you bring 2 guys who are just really good and have similar styles, or do you bring guys who have 2 completely different styles just in case one is getting beat, worse than the other?
That's obviously a very good question. One of the things I'm worried about is obviously Jeff Snyder for Canada. Just the way he is dominant in the game and whatnot. And I think he's a one-way player where he just goes for the clamp and wins it to himself. That's all he does. And he's so good at it that it's like, how do you defeat him? How do you beat him in that? So and watching my face-off guys through the years, through high school, coaching those guys, we do the same system. We clamp and we go. You win the clamp, you're good, you're gone. Um, and Greg is kind of like the same way as Jeff is. You win the clamp, you fight for the clamp, and you go. Um, Paladin's more of a I want to say dynamic guy, where he'll use different styles against you. And that's one
I
reason.
would say is he more of a I'm trying not to say this, but he's more of like a thinker in terms of the game, because I know some guys who face off, they're really stubborn in their way, and that if he if a guy is going to face off, he goes, it's my way or the highway. I'm a 60, I'm a 60, 70, 50%, 55% face off guy. I'm winning a good amount of this game. I'm just going to keep doing it until it works. I just need to find, what this guy's doing and do it. Some guys go, okay, he's doing this, I'm going to do this. And they're kind of like counteracting moves, being defensive. Sometimes they'll go forward based on what the guy's doing in terms of plunging or, popping and going on a face-off, or just winning it backwards. So do you think Mike Poppleton's kind of like that?
Yeah, I mean he'll go in and he'll do different things just to throw off his opponent, from watching him, um, and just keep his opponent guessing. And that's one reason why I would pick him, is just because he just does different things. Um, but the problem with that is that if the guy understands what you're doing, he's just gonna keep on doing his thing, like Jeff Snyder, just winning the clamp and going.
Right.
So it's I want Poppleton to go because he'll throw off his opponent in a sense. And Greg Renlin will go if they need the ball. Boom, Greg Renlin's there, pops in, wins it, goes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like why I like those two together, is because Greg Renlin, like you said, is so stubborn and in his way. He worked in an interview I think I remember listening to, about he was talking about his injuries and stuff like that, and like he realized that just fighting for the ball wasn't really the way to go about facing off. Now it's all about technique and stuff like that. Um, so he really worked on his hand speed and everything like that, and you can tell when he came back this year that his hand speed and his face-off percentage wins just went skyrocketing. So that's, I mean, obviously we're both on Greg Gorelli, and no doubt about it. It's just the second guy that's really, really, throwing us
Right,
off.
and I think it's not like, obviously with any of these guys that we're picking, it's not just service like, oh, he sucks. Okay, all these guys are great players. It's like picking hairs at this point. It's literally like, fine tuning a team and a roster towards Coach Mead's style and what he wants. I think that second guy is going to be based on what Coach Mead wants to do. Does he want to use Poppleton as a change-up guy, or does he want to use Chris Eck as just another guy who comes in and just bullies and wears down the face-off, the opposing face-off man? So, I mean, a lot of what is going to be picked is based on Coach Mead's style, and, I mean, I don't know about you, Brendan, I haven't watched enough of what he really does, because I feel like at Navy a lot of what he did is, tough physical play, and if that's going to be the style they play, then I would go with Greg Gernlian and Chris Eck.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, it obviously, Coach Mead very, he wants physical guys. He wants guys that are going to work their butts off and go to the net, get hit, and take the hit, lay the hit, and just fight for every single ground ball that they can. And Greg's obviously that one guy that's going to do everything that Coach Mead asks. But then if he wants that, Chris X a guy. Anthony Kelly is big. He's a big guy. He has decent hands and whatnot, but I don't think he'll be the top guy going. And then I like Paulton a lot just because he throws a changeup at him. But that's just me.
yeah. So we did a lot on the offense. We got 10 minutes left here. Let's look at the other side of the ball. Keeping the ball in the net. So we got the defense and the goalies. We'll look at the defense and the long stick midfield together. So just to look at last year's roster, or sorry, I don't have the roster anymore, but with 15 guys taken, you got 23 total. So that means you have 7 guys left. Presumably you would say 2 goalies, so you would have about 5 defensemen coming in. So I would say that you take about either 3 down low defensemen and a long stick midi that goes the whole game, or you take 3 down low and go 2 up top with your long stick midi, so you keep the guys fresh. So just to list the guys on down low defense: Mitch Belisle, Jesse Bernhardt, Brendan Buckley, Tucker Durkin, Michael Evans, Joe Fletcher out of Loyola, who's the only college player to have had made the cut of 52 players. Brian Karalunas, Dylan Roy, Brett Schmidt, Lee Zink. And then in terms of long stick midfield, there's only 4 guys: Brian Farrell, Kyle Hartzell, Kyle Sweeney, and Michael Simon. So, Brendan, out of that list, what do you see, I guess, would be the team's strength in terms of you taking, I guess let's look at the long stick midfield first. So you got those 4 guys. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? I mean, could you move any of those guys down low if you needed to? I mean, I look at the defense, and a guy like Jesse Bernhardt, right, from Maryland, when they brought him into Chesapeake, he was used both up top and then kind of moved down low. So if I took an extra guy on defense, I would probably include him and then just take one long stick midi. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I was going to say, you take a long stick midi that can play both close and LSM. Kyle Sweeney is one of those guys that can do that. We saw him play LSM for the Philadelphia Barrage, and then he got moved down to close because the Boston Cannons took too many LSMs, and they needed a close guy. So Kyle Sweeney was the most experienced guy, so they put him down there. So I think Kyle Sweeney, Jesse Bernhardt, Tucker Durkin, Lee Zink, and Michael Evans. Those are my 5 guys that I think go. The reason why I pick Zink and Durkin is because they're both 2 of the most physical players on this list. Lee Zink, Defensive Player of the Year. He controls his opponent. Let's put it that way. I mean, going up against this guy is like going up against King Kong. This guy's just physical. He's all over you. He knows what you're going to do before you even think it, which is phenomenal. Tucker Durkin, I pick him only because he's young. Not because he's young, but because he plays at the same. He plays very physical. He's quick to recover. I just like the style of play that he has. He's going to work hard for you, and he's going to learn very well. So putting him and Zink together is going to go out. That putting them 2 together is just like, holy crap! We're going against the Bash brothers in a sense. No offense to Brian Spallina and Nicky Polanco; they're the true Bash brothers. But heading into FIL, those 2 guys are going to be considered.
Yeah, no, the two Bash brothers were my teammates on the Mighty Ducks, actually. So we all take offense to that, Brendan.
I know that. Don't get me wrong. Sorry, was it Dean Portman, Fulton Reed? Sorry, guys. No offense to you guys.
Do the best to ever do it, baby. All right.
Hey,
my boys.
Hey, you want to go? Let's go.
All honesty.
Let's take this one.
I would take Jesse Bernhardt down low for defense because of what I just talked about in terms of moving a guy both up top and down low. He was one of the main ingredients that helped Chesapeake get to the championship or their second straight MLL championship. And actually one guy who I was actually surprised seeing on this list is Brendan Buckley, because the guy only played in 4 games. I mean, I think that's more due to his Army commitment than anything else. But then he wasn't even protected by the Boston Cannons this last draft. And now he's on a new team. I mean, I don't know. I think it's just surprising. I don't think he makes it, but it's very surprising to see him on the list. I do agree with you with Durkin and Zink. I mean, Zink was the best defender last year. Guys, I think, only averaged about a point or 2 against him, and that's what made him so great. Tucker Durkin was the only rookie to make the All-Pro team, and they only have one All-Pro team. So I think you take those two guys, you take Bernhardt. Belial, I'm not a fan of. Buckley, like I said, I don't think he makes it. It's interesting between Evans, Karalunas, because Karalunas is just as versatile as Jesse Bernhardt is, and had more cost takeaways and all that stuff. He was takeaway king at Villanova. I don't know where to go. I think I would go with him as well down low. That way you have kind of two long stick middies. And then if you're going to take a pure long stick midi, I really like Brian Farrell. I think his game's really good in terms of being a guy who's physical from up top. I think he'll fit Richie Meade's style. And also, he's a real big threat in transition. In college, he used to score goals, just powering over the top, just coming down. Great shot. He'd do the same thing for Boston. Now he's on Ohio, I think. But I like those five guys. With a couple minutes left here, Brendan, we look at the goalies. Now, the goalies, I think, is probably the hardest thing to do, to be honest. I don't know where you go. You have to take two just in case of an injury. But all these guys are so close together. I would say, if you're looking at statistics, basically the four goalies that are left are Drew Adams, John Galloway, Jesse Schwartzman, and Kip Turner. In terms of the goalies, Drew Adams, I think, makes the most spectacular saves. John Galloway is a better combination of saves and his, everyone is, brags about his clearing ability. Jesse Schwartzman was the goalie of the year, and Kip Turner won an MLL championship. So it's kind of like, where do you go here, Brennan? Do you take Jesse Schwartzman, who's the goaltender of the year but didn't show up in the championship? Do you take Kip Turner, who's very good and, has won back-to-back championships? Do you take a young guy like Galloway, or do you take the guy who's going to make flashy saves like Drew Adams?
I don't take Jesse Schwartzman. No offense to the big guy between the pipes. I love everything that he does. I've rooted for him since he was at Hopkins. He was one of my favorite goalies growing up, but I don't take him. And the reason why I say that is because his play during high-level games, such as MLL championship games, it's not there. Something happens where, he plays amazing throughout the season, and all of a sudden that championship weekend comes, and it's just like, what happens to him? He just disappears. So no offense to Jesse, but I just don't take him. And the other three, it's hard to say. Like you said, Kip Turner's won two MLL championships. John Galloway, very quick, very focused on his clears, very vocal. He's won 2 NCAA championships. I think Turner won one maybe. And then Drew Adams, who's just one of the most consistent goalies in the game. I want to pick Drew. I don't want to give him any bad luck for the future for this weekend, but I pick Drew because he is consistent. This whole past MLL season, he's had nothing but bombs thrown at him. He didn't really have a defense on him in front of him, so he was really just seeing a lot more shots. I just like the way that he stands and commands back there. He stands tall no matter what's happening during the game. Even if they're down by 5 or 6, he's still back there making those saves, commanding that defense. And I really love Turner and Galloway. It's hard to choose between the two because they're good in their different styles. Galloway's very vocal. He's very emotional. He's really good at clears. He sees he sees plays before they happen. And then Turner's just back there doing his thing. You can't really take much out of Turner's hands, in a sense. So between those two, it's it's a big stumper. Turner had 58% save percentage last year, or at the end of the playoffs. I think it was. He was at 58% at the playoffs. I'm just these two are just stumping me right now. It's hard to choose between the two. But if I'm gonna pick, I would probably go. I know we're a little bit. I know we're running over time a little bit, and I apologize for it. Um, Turner's 50s. Yeah, I'd probably Kip Turner just because he has those two MLL championships and he's been up against those guys. So I'll probably go Kip Turner.
Yeah, so, I mean, as we're winding down the show here, I would probably go, I agree with you, Schwartzman, and I would probably go with Turner and Adams. I think Galloway just, unfortunately misses it. But we're about to end the
Yeah.
show, so everyone, thank you for listening to us. Hopefully you're warm, and most importantly, hopefully you're safe during this snowstorm we're getting. And hopefully you guys have a good weekend. So thank you for listening to MLL Roundtable. And we'll be back with you next week at our new time, or same time as today, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Have a good day, everybody.